come November. 9 in 10 Americans say the immigration issue will be important to them when they vote in November. That according to the latest CNN poll. 1 in 7 say it'll be the only issue that matters in November. You know that the Senate Judiciary Committee has passed a bill last week that would include a temporary guest worker program, echoing the words of the president, and a means for undocumented, they call them, illegal aliens, to work toward citizenship. But in December we had our way with 44-37. The Congress of the United States, the House, passed a bill that includes neither a guest worker program nor a legalization process. And that bill would erect a 700-mile fence along the Mexican border, would increase criminal penalties for illegal aliens caught inside the United States, would make it illegal for organizations to provide food or medical care to illegals, and increase penalties for employers who hire them. Makes only good sense, in my opinion. All right, what are we going to do about all this? The non-voters are the largest U.S. political party. Did you know that? If you want to win an election in America, what you got to do is round up the non-voters. Non-voters, they constitute America's largest political party, about 120 million. And in that past presidential election, one of the most controversial in history, a little more than 105, that's right, 105 million voters and votes were cast. In other words, the eligible voters who did not vote outnumbered the ones who did. Now, every 6 years we elect a Senate to the United States of America. Every 6 years. And every 2 years we elect a Congress, so we can change very quickly on this next election. 1/3 of the Senate is up for grabs, and the entire Congress. The House of Representatives, you and I have the opportunity to change the direction of America. We're caught with the president. There's another 3 years to go, unfortunately. But we can change the direction of the Congress of the United States, and by voting out or in that third of the Senate, we can change that direction too. This is not a new conversation for this reporter. I'm an old man, very few years left, but I'm going to use the last breath to tell the story. The sovereignty of the United States of America, a nation that does not protect its borders, a nation that does not have a border, is a nation soon to disappear from the face of the earth. Well, about mid-50s, out here in Southern California, I met people like Hal Ezell of the INS. Hal Ezell, a stand-up guy who understood the invasion of America. And I met also a wondrous fella, a biology professor, Riverside, California. His name's Cecil Johnson. And the other day, Chuck Wilder, my associate of 30 years, said, let's play one of Cecil Johnson's statements of that time, 35 years ago. And we played it. It was as though he had made the statement yesterday or today. The words he spoke were absolutely on target. What has come of America? What we're going through now? The decision to be made. Cecil Johnson's still with us, and he wanted to talk about what he witnessed on the streets of America. Marauding mobs, mobocracy. It didn't just happen. It was Marxist, socialist, communist inspired, and it happened. Marauding mobs of youngsters who had every opportunity in the world to take advantage of this wonderful nation of ours, but unfortunately too many illegal. There they were on the streets of America, swearing, spitting, damning the United States of America and our founding fathers and all the things that have made this wonderful nation of ours so great for all of us. Well, Cecil's on the phone, and I'd like to recall some of those moments with him. Professor, how are you?
Oh, great, George, but in a rage, and as usual, your usual eloquent self.
You've come to the right place for the rage. Carry on.
Yes, as you know, we've talked about this before, but for 50 years, you've been on it. I've never known anyone on radio and television, and also the fact that you used to ride your white horse in the Rose Parade.
Palomino, not a white horse, a Palomino.
A Palomino, I'm sorry, George.
All right, go ahead.
My error there. But here in Virginia, forgive my voice, it's a little bit gravelly today.
I'll take it any way you can speak it.
Every time, I mean, we got these people saying we have between 12 to 20 million illegal aliens. Well, it's more like 20, according to a Bear Stearns.
Or 30, yes.
Or 30. And Bush is coming on almost teary-eyed. I have never, in all of my 80 years, George, we're both old men, but we've dedicated a portion of our lives to try to inform very angry American people out there of what's really happening to them, and they know, and they are being ignored. And Bush comes on, and as he argues for this guest worker amnesty, which, am I still there, George?
You bet you are.
Yeah, as he's arguing for these amnesty, he comes on the air and he says we have to bring these people out of the shadows.
Uh-oh.
What do you mean out of the shadows? There's crazy people on the streets of Los Angeles, San Francisco. Many of them have been bussed in from all over the southwestern part of the United States. And what I want to know is, where do they get the money to bus these people in and to provide these buses and the school buses used by the Los Angeles City schools to transport students out of classes is unbelievable. And if you think Mexican flags are new in the city of Angels or Los Angeles, 30 years ago they were flying the American flags in certain classrooms in Los Angeles, California, because I got calls on my own radio show, which you encouraged me to go into to begin with, down in San Bernardino. Because of you, I got into my own talk radio show that were calling in and saying the flags are already flying there. So this is nothing new. And when he says come out of the shadows, you probably heard this before, but they're out of the shadows. And what I want them to continue to do is to continue to wave these flags, because if they're Latino advocates, La Raza, MAPA, MALDE, funded by 50 of the largest corporations in America with deep pockets, I want them to keep those Mexican flags out there, because what I don't want them to do is to exchange their ancestral flags for the stars and stripes, because it would be hypocritical.
Cecil, I want you to take a breath. You're right on target as always. Cecil Johnson, if you're just tuning in, biology professor, our acquaintance from way back in the mid-50s when he was up at Riverside, California. Now he's in Virginia. But you know, it's amazing. We're beginning to win. McCain was booed by the union leaders. Senator John McCain threatened to cut short his speech to union leaders. They booed him when he expressed his immigration views, challenged his statements, organized labor in the Iraq War, and they said we've had enough. And the senior senator outlined his position on the Senate immigration debate, saying tougher border enforcement must be accompanied by the guest worker provisions. It was an echo of Mr. Bush. And you know, don't think it's so strange, because when you look at what Bush has been and what he is, immigrant issues are very personal for George W. Bush. I was reading in the Los Angeles Times, and I was amazed, Cecil, that they printed this. They said that associates say he has long had a comfort level with Mexicans and their culture. And they show a 2004 campaign video. He was waving a Mexican flag. This is George. It should be shown all over America. At one point, he's shown there with the Mexican flag. And during the Mexican Independence Day, he was praising Mexico. It was in San Antonio, as I recall. And then he made a speech. He didn't know that we were listening. He said about 15 years before the Civil War, much of the American West was northern Mexico. That's what he says in the video. The people who lived there weren't called Latinos, weren't called Hispanics. They were Mexican citizens until all that land, listen to this, George W. Bush, all that land became part of the United States. And after that, many of them were treated as foreigners in their own land. This is your president, for God's sake. I know you're absorbing it.
Yes, George, what you say has me mesmerized. Because because, George, it's better than anything else anyone is saying on the national television, talk radio.
Can you believe those words? Can you believe his waving the flag? Now you understand what he's up to.
Well, I can't think. And here in Virginia, I'm a lifelong Republican. And I cannot believe a president of the United States could be representing the country of Mexico while the president of Mexico is sticking up for his country. And I don't think I have ever been so sick at the stomach and nauseated over American presidents' stand on these issues than in my entire lifetime in reading.
You are recalling those things we discussed 35, 40 years ago.
That's right, George.
And now let's take a look at Article 33 of the Mexican Constitution. Foreigners are those who do not possess the qualities. They have the right to the guarantees of our Constitution, but the executive of the Union, talking about Mexico's Constitution, has the exclusive right to expel from the national territory from Mexico immediately, without necessity of judicial proceedings, all foreigners whose stay judges inconvenient. Listen to this, you meddlers, you meddling bastards with America. Here it is, those who maraud our streets. Foreigners may not in any manner involve themselves in the political affairs of the country. And when they do, they're thrown out. A few have been killed. We're talking about the Mexican Constitution. It has a particular, well-known article. It deals quite cleanly and clearly with the status, the expectations of non-Mexicans in Mexico. That's the famous Article 33, Mexican Constitution. Foreigners may not, in any manner, involve themselves in the political affairs of the country. And here you have the president of Mexico and Derbez and Castaneda and all the others putting their nose in American politics, talking about how they oppose our 4437. Tell them to take their flag, shove it, go home.
Well, George, I wanted to mention, too, all of this is true because when Fox, the president of Mexico, says we protect our borders, they are right. But their borders, they let them in. They come all the way by train, and they funnel them into the United States along with all of their poor. And and one of the things that these rioters are using is si pueda. Yes, we are here, we come. And then they're chanting down there, we didn't cross borders, the borders crossed us. We didn't cross borders, the border crossed us. Well, that was a common chant by Cesar Chavez and his communist friend Saul Alinsky back during the United Farm Workers many years ago. And it was very interesting to see that the machismo of the United Farm Workers would come to New York or to visit Senator Edward Kennedy and come to these cocktail parties by Leonard Bernstein, and all of the wealthy elitists in New York would invite them in, and they'd come in their sombreros and try to pretend that they had something in common, these rich white, mainly white people like Leonard Bernstein. It was absolutely funny. Tom Wolfe wrote about this in one of his books years ago. But there is something that has come up. A lady came on the other night from Michigan. She is a House member from Michigan, and maybe you've heard of this. You probably have. But she said that in the Constitution it says, "We the people." And when we, the people, in other words, when they take a census, they count all the people that they can. And in California, for example, you just got 6 new districts. Well, they'll probably elect people with back to the House of Representatives. And so as these illegals accumulate, and since districts are based upon the numbers of people, she wants to amend the Constitution to say that you must be an American citizen before a district can be created.
You know, I look at our presidents, those who made good sense. President Theodore Roosevelt, 1919, here's what he said. In the first place, we should insist, if the immigrant who comes here in good faith becomes an American and assimilates himself to us. And then he talks about becoming, in very fact, an American, nothing but an American, that there can be no divided allegiance. And he said any man who says, I'm an American, but something else, isn't an American at all. And he speaks of one flag, the American flag. He excludes the red flag, which symbolizes all wars against liberty and civilization. He speaks of one language, Hayakawa. He speaks of one language, the English language. And then he says, we have room for but one sole loyalty, a loyalty to the American people. Teddy Roosevelt.
Wonderful patriotic words, George. I would like to wonder where the black faces are, the black politicians and the black leaders all over this country. How come I don't hear much out of them? There is there is a minister down in Riverside, California, a black minister who is speaking out on this.
And we have Terry Anderson here in South Los Angeles who speaks over and over again about it. You know, they've taken all the jobs of the black Americans.
Hear, hear.
It's time for the black Americans to stand up, as you say, and be counted.